Hey y'all, Ron K. Armstrong here, filmmaker extraordinaire, and today I want to talk to you about a very important subject, and I'm titling this the Hollywood Racial Totem Pole. But before I get into details about this, I want you guys to subscribe to my YouTube channel and like this video if you find it awesome. So let's talk a little bit about this. I called it again the Hollywood Racial Totem Pole. So Hollywood is supposed to be a big liberal town, all right? And what they profess is that they're into diversity. Well, we need to understand something very important. There's a difference between diversity and equality. And currently, right now, they use the term diversity as a distraction to keep minority groups out of Hollywood and from making real substantial progress. So let me explain what I mean by this whole idea and notion of diversity. For every racial group, I don't care whatever you have or gender, there are specific rules at play and specific needs that they have. African Americans have a different need than Latinos, than women, than white males. To lump them all into one category and think that they all share in some type of combined, plight is just ridiculous. Everyone has specific needs that need to be addressed specifically for their plight. Now, what Hollywood tends to do is they tend to produce products which they say meet that criteria of racial diversity. But when you look at it, it is nothing more than a more instilled and cemented version of white supremacy. And let me explain this in detail. And the best example I can use is Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry sold this to the networks with the idea of there would be this ship. It'd be a ship that would be traveling through space and has this multi ethnic racial cast on there. But when you talk about this diversity, you're looking at it from the terms of always on top is the white male. Then below that, you have every other demographic. You have your black female, then you have your Asian male. But the prerequisite for what they call diversity has to be that the white male is always on top. And as you know, what I call is the Captain Kirk syndrome. This white male is allowed to sleep with every woman of color, even green, purple, or blue, but never is the Asian or black male allowed to express their masculinity and sleep with white women. So that's a big taboo. You don't want to have that. And if, of course, as I covered this in a previous video, the Hollywood rule is if they do have a relationship with a white woman, there has to be some either a psychological dysfunction or tragedy where it keeps them apart. They can never come together in a harmonious, healthy relationship. But again, white males are allowed to sleep around with everyone and have an actual relationship with them. And many times that relationship, though it looks diverse, is not equal. It's not on par with the white male's power and command or power and influence. So Hollywood again uses this idea to pollute the waters, meaning bring in different racial backgrounds and call it diversity, but never addressing the real issue of equality. So let me go back. Let me go into this a bit more. When we look at many of the major Hollywood stars that are minorities in the business, um, Hollywood tends to put them out front and put them on the cover of magazines, and they make these speeches at the Oscars, which is all just full of shit. You know what I mean? Because what Hollywood is trying to do in this case specifically is they're distracting you from looking at the real means and method to solving this problem. And it's not going to come from these actors. I'm not going to get into the issue that there's a big economic disparity, and I'm not saying that they're paid differently from white actors. That's another issue. What I'm saying is though those actors who are living the lifestyle of the rich and famous aren't on par with you and I. All right. So the inner circle that they're in of power and influence is totally different. So they're not going to be experiencing the same level of racism as Joe Blow working at some steel mill. They're not going to be experiencing the same level of racism. Yes, they will be experiencing racism, but it's not going to be on that same level. So let's get that straight from the outset. So what Hollywood does is they cover up the real means and method to solving this problem by putting out there those actors and saying, look, we're becoming racially diverse. Look, we've got Idris Elba here, we got Alfred Woodard here, we got Oprah Winfrey here, right? And most often, if those individuals try to make any real change, they will be eliminated from the system, so they tread very carefully. But what I'm trying to tell you is that when you put these individuals out there in the forefront, it gives the illusion of inclusion. And it also doesn't cover the fact that many of these individuals got to where they are because they had connections and had people of influence that put them there. And also, there's a prerequisite as to why they're there. They have to do the billing of the Hollywood, do the bidding of the Hollywood agenda. Now, let me go back into how Hollywood is covering up what they're doing. They know that the way to make real substantial change is by looking at those people who are in control of Hollywood. And what I mean by that, I mean by the big studio executives. You have to look at who's in those positions of power and influence. And typically, if you see an African American and rarely an Asian, or almost never an Asian or Latino, these individuals that have been gone through their filter to make sure they're not nationalists from their race, they're not Chinese nationalists, African American nationalists, or Black nationalists, or Latino nationalists, that they're more of a kind of whitewash version that will implement the policies and the structure that they want, because they're not going to have they're not going to have the head of a studio who is pro-black going out there greenlighting a lot of African American films that portray African Americans in a very positive light. They're not going to do that. You know what I mean? So you got to start looking at who's head of the casting agencies, who are the top agents, who are the top Hollywood players. Do they represent America? Do they represent the array of racial groups in America? Now, taking this a step further, now that we got that covered and we understand that the real positions of power are what we need to be looking at, and not so much those people who are in the forefront who just represent smoke and mirrors. I mean, it's great. It's a good feeling to have a Barack Obama as the president and head of the free world. But if Barack Obama is not putting in policies that will help those who've been disenfranchised, and he's of no use. And he's just another version of the previous presidents. So understand that if you have your famous Hollywood stars and they don't have any power to do anything, then you're not looking at the right place. You're being diverted. It's like your right hand is like making all this, hey, look at me. But the left hand is the real one doing the clandestine activities behind the scenes. So let's get that straight. Another thing that we need to look at is that Hollywood is enacting this whole gender divide thing. So what they do is they understand that there are some segments of society like myself who understand that the power brokers behind the scenes are really important. So what does Hollywood does? They do exactly what I was talking about the filter system. They put in positions black females who will adhere to their doctrine. And those black females go out there and they produce material that bashes black men and creates more of a gender divide. And this is the same thing that Hollywood is doing with white men. Hollywood is attacking white males. And what it's doing is it's using white females to do that. This is not just a race thing. This is part of an overall goal and plan that they have, which I don't have time to get into that. All right. So I want you to think about that. These are constructed conflicts. These are not organic situations that come up or problems that happen. These are specifically orchestrated from those in high levels, and I'm talking above Hollywood. Okay. The other thing that we have to understand in terms of the racial totem pole, I don't know if I actually explain what that is, but if you look at the Native American totem pole, you have the different spirits and deities, one piled on top of the other. I'm sorry, I should have really gotten into detail about this earlier. And, that is what I mean by the racial totem pole, because always there's one at the top, and that top is consistent with white males. So anyway, going back to what I was saying, that now we look at this whole thing of whitewashing in Hollywood, where, just to cite some films as an example, you have Asians getting upset that Doctor Strange, the original Sorcerer Supreme, was cast with a white woman. You have a Ghost in the Shell, an Asian woman was replaced by Scarlett Johansson, and then you have the Great Wall. So the Asians are getting upset over this whitewashing, and at the same time we see Latinos asserting themselves and saying, listen, we're being portrayed as gangsters, drug dealers, and maids and servants, and we're not getting good roles. So let me set the record straight so we all have an understanding of what's going on here. I'm saying things that are uncomfortable, but they are the truth. The fact of the matter is that Asians and Latinos are not interested in getting into the system and making it better and changing it. They're more interested in assimilation. So they go on this whole idea of trying to further their own interests and align with African Americans who are sincerely trying to get into the system and change the system. They're trying to say, oh, we're your brothers and sisters, help us. But that only happens when they have a cause that they're fighting for, namely something like a Ghost in the Shell. But when African Americans start saying things about how unfair Hollywood is, we turn around and there's no one that has our back. We're like, well, where is our Latino brothers and sisters? Where's the Asian brothers and sisters? They're disappeared. That is because the majority of them are not interested, again, in changing the system, reforming the system. They want only acceptance and assimilation. I'm sorry if you don't like that, but that is the truth. Jennifer Lopez, J-Lo, all she wants to do is to be a unicorn, the lone Latina up there, and she's not helping her Latino brothers and sisters. You know, Asians, I'm sorry, if the Chinese film industry sold the rights to Ghost in the Shell, sold the rights to the Great Wall of China, or what have you, then that's your problem. You can go back to China and make more movies. You have a booming industry out there. Unfortunately, African Americans can go nowhere where they have a black Hollywood. That is the fact of the matter. And more specifically, let's get into details about that. Every time African Americans have tried to build an economic power base via business, via motion picture industry, white power brokers have come along and destroyed it. And you can cite examples such as Tulsa, Oklahoma with Black Wall Street, Rosewood, many, many more. So I'm sorry, but there is no alliance among these different minority groups, and they should not be an alliance because each minority group has its own specific situation that they need to deal with appropriately. And I don't think there needs to be alliance when some of us only want assimilation and acceptance and not to go in there and revolutionize and change the system so that there is true equality and not diversity. You know, let's stop the bullshit, you know. So, as I said before, white males are being attacked in Hollywood. Why are they being attacked? Because there is an agenda to emasculate males, create the gender divide between males and females, and get them fighting. And this is all set up for another step in the plan. And I'm not going to reveal that or go into that right now, but this is where it's going. And you need to understand this. So you cannot address one without the other. We have to look at the totality of the problem that is going on. We have to address it in the sense of looking at the real power brokers, making sure the power brokers, reflect different racial enclaves. We have to stop looking at those stars or starlets that are being put to the forefront and think that represents true equality or true advancement or progress. And let me tell you something. When you only look at these Hollywood stars and you think just because they got nominations or Oscars or Emmys that there is some real progress. What Hollywood tends to do is give them little awards, go back to the whitewashing, and then when they get caught, then start to give out more awards to minority groups. So, and this is a pattern that has been going on for years. They go along, give out these little token awards to films that don't represent the best and of our work. And then when they get caught and called out on it, then they start to bombard us with more awards, put more of the minority actors on the forefront in all magazine covers. And then after a while, they roll all of that progress back and go back to the same old doctrine of white supremacy. So let's keep that in mind, and that has to change. We have to work on making things better. All right. So that's all I have for the racial totem pole, which is what we're looking at. So we have to stop looking at the superficial things and really get into the meat and potatoes of how to make change in Hollywood, how to address the issues. And we're not going to do that if we're not looking at the fact that Hollywood does have an agenda. There are major power players in Hollywood that are trying to change the cultural mindset of the world to fit their agenda. All right, so really that's all I have for now. Again, if you like this broadcast, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like the video. So until next time, Ron K. Armstrong, that's all for now.